Hey guys, Dr. Israetel here for Renaissance Periodization, continuing on with our raw powerlifting priorities. Alright, today's topic, or priority rather, is stimulus-recovery-adaptation, which I'll be shortening to SRA. And of course, in the grand scheme, we have specificity as the most important priority, overload after that, fatigue management. Those are the real foundational basic priorities. You must get them right in order to have good success. Now, SRA starts our first of the detailed priorities. You don't have to get these 100% right to do well, but if you're doing better and better, gains are harder and harder as you get more advanced, they should very much be a part of your program. So as we can see, SRA up there doesn't account for a whole lot of powerlifting success. If you don't pay much attention to SRA, and we'll get into a second what that means, you can still have a good, decent amount of success if your specificity is right, you're providing good overload, and if your fatigue management is on the money. So SRA is by definition a detail, but it's probably one of the more important details we can focus on. So let's get a definition of SRA going here. SRA stands for Stimulus, Recovery, and Adaptation. And these are processes which follow one another in a training program. So, hard training, powerlifting style training, stimulates adaptive processes, but adaptation occurs during recovery, not during the training itself. So you actually cause the adaptation during training, but the adaptation reveals itself, muscles actually grow, strength actually improves while you rest and recover. Another interesting fact about SRA is that adaptive processes can actually be hindered by hard training during the time adaptation is occurring. So if you hit it hard, you stimulate gains. Hitting it hard too soon before recovery and adaptation has progressed, before the changes have been made, can actually make things worse. So that means that training has to assume what's called a session, rest, session paradigm. You come into the gym, you hit it hard, you leave, rest, recover. When you're back to almost full strength, you come in for the next workout and hit that body part or muscle group or what have you again. So in training for powerlifting, this is kind of how SRA reveals itself. You train hard to stimulate gains in size and strength depending on the phase. You recover by either not training for a couple of days or by training very light during those days to speed up adaptations. And of course you adapt, you get better, you get bigger, stronger, whatever you're looking for, and then you repeat the process by training hard again. It seems kind of like a no-brainer, but unfortunately, all kinds of bad ideas in the sport that violate this on occasion. Let's take a look at them really quick. So, every now and again, you see a powerlifting program that violates SRA pretty directly. One of the bad ideas is training the same muscles back to back. For example, we can do heavy squats on Monday, and then heavy deadlifts on Tuesday. Well, you use your posterior chain quite a bit in squats. You definitely use your back and your erector complex quite a bit in squats. What happens to the recovery and adaptation of those muscles if you hit deadlifts the next day? Well, the answer is nothing good. You're not going to be able to recover and adapt from squats if you're hitting the lower body hard with deadlifts right after. Same idea, even worse probably, with squats and front squats on repeat days. If you hit squats on Monday, do not front squat on Tuesday. You will literally be possibly going backwards in your adaptations by directly blocking the recovery and adaptation that occurs, or supposed to occur, from those squats you did earlier. Another common mistake, especially beginners make, benching. People don't generally like to squat 4 or 5 times a week, but a lot of people bench 4 times a week or more. And the question here is, when do you recover and adapt? If your muscles are always sore, or so muted by the whole overload and training that they're not sore anymore ever at all, if your muscles are always in the gym getting hit, when are you supposed to grow? When are strength adaptations actually supposed to happen? And the answer is, we have no idea. And most people who bench 4 times a week don't get very far because of it. On the flip side of SRA, it's possible to train during a recovery period, but it's also possible to assume that a recovery period takes much longer than it actually does. So a problem can be not training frequently enough. 2 times a week training per body part is a good start for most people. Real serious beginners can train 3 times a week. Much more advanced, really, really big people can train every 5 days, perhaps at the very limits once a week per body part. Most people are in the 2 times per week range. So 1 time a week range training, if you say hit your legs, your lower body just once a week, that muscle starts to go through recovery adaptation, quadriceps, hamstrings, etc. They finish recovering and adapting probably if you hit a Monday by Thursday, and then the question is, what do they do for the rest of the week? What do they do Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Well, use it or lose it, right? So for a couple of days they'll stagnate, nothing will happen, and towards the end of the weekend, you're actually going to start losing size and strength in those muscles. Training 1 time a week for most people is not good enough per body part. 2 times a week is much better off. On the other hand, what are some good ideas as far as the SRA principle is concerned? And these are sort of reflected off the bad idea. Spacing out your body parts evenly through the week is a good idea. So, for example, you hit squats hard on Monday, hit front squats hard on Thursday. Then you have plenty of time to recover from both and make both sessions productive. Stimulate with both, recover from both, adapt from both, and be able to re-stimulate again when the time is right. 2 times per week training is good for most body parts, for most raw powerlifters. Now, movements are not what we're talking about here. We're talking about muscle group. So for example, you can deadlift once a week only. You don't have to deadlift twice a week. I don't know very many people that can survive a 2 time a week deadlifting protocol, but you have to hit the posterior chain probably twice a week in some capacity. So if you deadlift on Monday, for example, maybe if you do some light good mornings or glute ham raises on Thursday, lighter to allow for recovery, but still getting a little bit of stimulus, that's probably a good idea. Twice a week is still a good idea for the muscles involved in the deadlift, but just deadlifting itself, probably a good idea to limit to once a week. Now, you definitely want to avoid what are called recovery taxing modalities between workouts. What does that mean? These are forms of training you can do. Let's say you have heavy squats Monday and then heavy front squats Thursday. In between Monday and Thursday, you can do some things that screw up your recovery. For example, high intensity interval training cardio. It's awesome to get in great general shape. It's phenomenal. But for serious powerlifters, it will absolutely tax your ability to get maximum recovery and adaptation and thus maximum gains. And as a matter of fact, while we're on the subject, most cardio in general exerts some level of adaptive interference towards strength and hypertrophy processes. The best amount of cardio for a powerlifter that's in good shape, that has a lower body fat, is zero cardio. Now, there are times to do cardio, but we must admit, before we program, cardio is almost always going to interfere with adaptations. It's not going to help. Powerlifting means you hit it really hard in training, but you also hit it really hard in rest. Some of the best powerlifters are people that can rest really well. They don't run around, they don't fret, they don't get too nervous, they don't interfere with their recovery. They're unbelievable during training, and when they're not training, they're half asleep, or they're eating, or they're doing something that's not super physical. That's how you get really good at powerlifting. Hitting it hard and really allowing that rest and recovery to promote adaptation. That's what the sport is all about. Adaptation, getting bigger, getting stronger. All right, so finally, sort of to conclude this talk, some real-world tips and a bit of implications for us. High-frequency training routines, super high-frequency ones. For example, Smolov can be considered one of these, and the Bulgarian routine, which is designed for Olympic weightlifting, which is actually much less stressful than powerlifting, so it's okay for Olympic lifting, especially if you're on drugs. If you're drug-free, Bulgarian doesn't pay off the dividends for very long. For powerlifters, doing a Bulgarian-style routine where you max out more than 2 times per week is probably a really bad idea. It works okay for beginners because they can't train hard enough to disrupt their body's systems, disrupt technically homeostasis enough for it to really count. So they can actually recover from a Bulgarian or Smolov type routine because they're just not doing that much damage. It also works for intermediates in powerlifting who take a lot of drugs. If you take enough drugs, you can recover from all sorts of stuff that you're not supposed to be able to recover from. However, rarely is it a good idea to do these super high frequency routines, especially for long periods of time, for stronger powerlifters. People who do this often experience stagnation, overreaching, which is a precursor to overtraining, and injury becomes much more likely. 2 times a week training is a pretty good start. You start pushing it with other lifts, for a short time it can actually be a benefit. For a long time, as a steady training philosophy, if you keep anything over 2 times a week, it's probably going to be a bad deal. On the other hand, super low frequency routines are also not the best idea. I've got news for you. You're not Marcus Rule, the bodybuilder, whose pecs were 5 inches thick. You're not Clay Brandenburg, whose pecs are also 5 inches thick and has benched 900 pounds in competition. Your chest does not take 1 week to heal. Does your chest consistently get sore for 1 full week from training? No. So you shouldn't be training it once a week. It's probably healed in a couple of days, and it's probably a good time to hit some sort of pushing movement again. So bigger and super strong, super big powerlifters might need more time to heal, but most people can benefit from 2 times a week training session. If you weigh 350 pounds, you bench 600 raw, etc., you might just do 1 pushing day per week. Most other people, they can benefit from 2 sessions per week. 1 is just not enough. You spend most of the week not adapting, not recovering. You've recovered already, and now you're just sitting around for no reason whatsoever. Now, to finish this talk up and put this really into perspective, how important is the SRA principle for powerlifting, for raw powerlifting? Well, the answer is, in this context, per week volume load is the most important. It doesn't so much matter if you do a Bulgarian split, a small off split, a 2 time per week split, or a 1 time per week split, as long as you get the same amount of sets and reps and weight as other people of your size, and training sort of development, you're probably going to do as well as they are, about as well as they are. But frequency and structure, so to put this in perspective, frequency structure, which is what SRA is talking about, how often per week you train and how spread apart your sessions are, is by definition a detail. It's not a huge factor. However, as your program gets more advanced, as you get to be a better lifter, as you push the limits of recovery, SRA can absolutely matter. So it's pertinent to understand this principle so that when you need it, you can make sure your SRA is properly applied, you're training the correct number of times in sequence, allowing for proper recovery between training sessions. That way, you can maximize your results and make sure you have all your ducks in a row and start getting to be the best powerlifter you can be. That's all I've got for today. See you guys next time.